Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. You know, we had a caller talking about President Obama being a racial divider and not a uniter. Clip number 2, this is Diana Williams, WABC-TV, asking him about this specific issue about his failure to unite America. Let's listen.
You were the one many years ago when you were running for this office who said, I'm going to create a bipartisan atmosphere in Washington. Yet, Washington is more split than ever before. This country is more divided than ever before. Why have you not been able to create a bipartisan atmosphere here? And do you take any of the blame on yourself for that?
Well, I think that if you look at my track record over the last 4 years, I have consistently sought compromise.
Stop right there. Stop right there. I cannot take it. This is President Obama. I think if you look at my track record over the last 4 years, I have consistently sought compromise. Jeff, pull the trigger.
Negotiate on anything.
Let's hear that.
I will not negotiate on anything.
Let's hear that again.
I will not negotiate on anything.
One more time.
I will not negotiate on anything.
All right, Rob, back that up and then play that soundbite again. Start at the top with Diana Williams, WABC-TV.
You were the one many years ago when you were running for this office who said, I'm going to create a bipartisan atmosphere in Washington. Yet, Washington is more split than ever before. This country is more divided than ever before. Why have you not been able to create a bipartisan atmosphere here? And do you take any of the blame on yourself for that?
Well, I think that if you look at my track record over the last 4 years, I have consistently sought compromise, sometimes to the point where Democrats have been mad at me, but I didn't care because I did what I thought was best for the country. So when it came to deficit reduction, we've actually reduced our deficit in half since I came into office. It's going down faster than any time in the last 50 years. When it comes to dealing with our long-term health care costs, I've said I'm willing to take some tough choices. The problem we have right now is that on the other side, there's been just a faction of the Republican Party, it doesn't represent all Republicans, that have decided to take a very extreme position and to use very extreme tactics in order to get stuff done. And the more moderate, reasonable members of the Republican Party up in Congress oftentimes have had difficulty dealing with that faction.
So that's President Obama, and she asked him the question, do you take any of the blame on yourself for that? And he says no. It's all the Republicans' fault. It's their fault. None of this is ever his fault. And this is actually pathological, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, there's some kind of psychological aberration here at work. Nothing is ever his fault. So he's asked directly, will you take any of the blame for the fact that America is divided? It's not united. He says, no, none of it's my fault. It's all the Republicans' fault. And he talks about the fact that he is reducing he just tells a flat-out lie. I have consistently sought compromise. Jeff, I want you to get that ready again. Here's President Obama. Go ahead.
I will not negotiate on anything.
One more time.
I will not negotiate on anything.
Maybe I should just pack up and go home.
He says, well, it's all the Republicans' fault. They won't work with me. I might as well pack up and go home. I have consistently sought compromise, and we just heard over and over again, I will not negotiate on anything. So there's no compromise there. Where's the compromise in this? I just don't see it. And he brags on the fact that he's reduced the deficit. Deficit is coming down faster than any time. Well, he jacked it up 10 times what it was under Bush's last year. I mean, Bush's next to last year was $160 billion. Obama's first year was $1.6 trillion. So he jacks up the deficit 10 times what it was under Bush's last year, where he was in control and the Republicans were in control of the budget. The budget his very last year was $460 billion. That had to do with TARP and the fact that the control of the House and the Senate had shifted to the Democrats. So not all of that's on him, but he signed off on it. But the point is, President Obama jacked up the deficit 10 times what it was under Bush's last year, Republicans last year, and then he's cut that in half. Yeah, that's true, but it's still, the deficit is still 4 times higher than it ever was under the Republicans under Bush. So it's like a retailer. You know, they have these big discounts, 50% off. Well, what they do is they jack everything up about 200%, and then they have a 50% off sale, and you're still paying more than it was marked at originally, and they're bragging about these steep discounts. This is exactly what President Obama is doing here. So it's all the Republicans' fault, and they won't engage in compromise. You know, and what we've seen, in my mind, is abject compromise, frankly, from the Republicans. We've got it again today with this deal that the Senate has come up with. The only thing that's in that deal that the Senate has made, Mitch McConnell, they folded faster than a cheap Bedouin tent in a stiff desert breeze. The only thing that is in that debt ceiling agreement that the Republicans have made, this devil's detail they've made, or devil's bargain that they've made with the Democrats, is to require income verification for people that sign up for subsidies under Obamacare. You know what the problem with that is? That's what the law already says. It's already in there. You have to verify your income. It's already in there. This doesn't represent any kind of concession. Asking that the law be enforced, that's a compromise? Since when is asking that the law be enforced as written? Since when does that represent some sort of concession or some kind of compromise? So once again, the Republicans haven't given up anything. I mean, they haven't gotten anything. It's like the guy said about Boehner's negotiating strategy: start a war, start a fight, then surrender just before you're ready to win and get nothing out of it. That's what the Republicans are doing. But I do want to talk about this default business. Why don't we play clip number 1? This is Charlie Rangel. And talk about the military demonizing AFA. Listen to what Charlie Rangel does to conservatives across the fruited plain.
This isn't a question of the House and Senate differing. This is not even a question of Republicans and Democrats differing. This is all about a handful of people who got elected as Republicans that want to bring down our government. You can see it in the streets. You can see where they're coming from. And the same way they fought as Confederates, they want to bring down the government and reform it.
Wait a minute. Whoa. I'm sorry. Are you likening, and I'm only assuming you're referring to the Tea Party members who are pretty intransigent on their views. Are you likening them to Confederates?
Well, I can tell you this. If you take a look at the states that they control, take a look at the Dixiecrats, see how they went over to the Republican Party, and see
Michelle Bachmann is not from Dixie. What are you talking about?
I just love that. What are you talking about? That is Ashley Banfield of CNN. She can't believe what she's hearing. What are you talking about? And so he's labeling all the Republicans as Dixiecrats. They're Confederates. Well, let's not forget, Charlie Rangel, that the Confederates were Democrats. The ones that held a population in slavery were Democrats. The ones that fought to keep them in bonds were Democrats. The ones that fought the Republicans who tried to set free the slaves were Democrats. And then he's demonizing Michelle Bachmann. She's like from Minnesota, which was not part of the Confederacy. So this was too much even for a CNN anchor. What are you talking about? Got to love it. Now let's grab clip number 3. This is George Will in a debate with Juan Williams about this threat of a default. Remember, tomorrow the Treasury runs out of the authority to borrow money. In other words, if the debt ceiling is not raised, and I hope it's not raised, I hope the Republicans do not capitulate. John Boehner is threatening to ignore the Hastert rule and pass this Senate bill, which, by the way, is unconstitutional from Jump Street. It's unconstitutional. You cannot start a revenue bill. You cannot start an appropriations bill in the Senate. It is unconstitutional. This should be ignored by the House. If the Constitution meant anything, the House would just ignore it. Oh, that's nice. You can go ahead and play in your little sandbox. That's immaterial because every appropriations bill has got to start in the House. It's in the Constitution. It's the law, to paraphrase the Obama people. Anyway, and I forget where I was going with this. Oh, yeah. The borrowing authority. So this thing is unconstitutional. If Boehner does it, the only way he can do it is with Democratic support. So he'll have to violate the Hastert rule, sell out his own party, sell out conservative principles. You would hope it would be the end of his speakership. But anyway, George Will talking with Juan Williams about the issue of default. And what he says here is right on the money. Listen carefully.
The last time we faced cataclysm over this was when, Standard & Poor's lowered our credit rating. People said disaster. No, the cost of borrowing actually went down 40%. I don't think the markets are as irrational as some of the people on Wall Street say. I repeat what I've said here before. Default is a choice. A choice in the sense that we have 10 times more revenue coming in than is needed to service our debt. We can continue to service our debt by not paying certain other vendors and certain other programs. We will only default if it is a choice, and furthermore, the 14th Amendment, empowering the President not at all, but Congress entirely, says it is a constitutional requirement to pay, under the full faith and credit of the United States, our bonded debt.
So that's George Will, and what he says is exactly right, that default can only happen by choice. It has to be deliberate because we have 10 to 12 times more revenue coming into the federal government than is necessary to service the debt. And never forget, the only way we default is if we do not service the debt. That takes less than 10% of revenues that continue to stream into the federal government. You and I were showing up to work every day. Money is being withheld from our paychecks. Every time we get paid, it's being shipped off to these bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. That money continues to flood the coffers of the United States Treasury. They got 10 times more in the money that's taken out of our wallets. They got 10 times more money than they need to service the debt. So the only one who can precipitate a default is the President of the United States by becoming petty and childish and pathological and simply making a decision to refuse to allocate money for the service of the national debt. Now, it's his job as the executive branch, it's his job to pay our bills. That's one of the functions that Congress appropriates the money, and the executive is the one that's responsible to disperse it. So the only way we can go into default is if he deliberately chooses to plunge us into default, which, and I'm going to play the sound bites after the break, Representative Tom McClintock thinks not beyond the realm of possibility that President Obama would deliberately plunge us into the chaos of default just because he can. Focal Point and AFR Talk, back in 2.